Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is David Camacho, and I am here with my colleagues Erica Brooks and Timmy Augustine. And so today we present to you a case study that is related to beers and breweries. And we wanted to really get a deep dive into some exploratory data analysis to be able to see if there were a couple of correlations between amongst the metrics that were being presented to us and be able to say if we could make a decision or a sane decision based on our strategic approach. So to start off, we want to give a slight overview about the data sets. We want to dive into the summaries on a state level. We want to address missing data. And then after that, we want to do some analysis on the ABV and IBU values. We want to address the summary statistics and also some correlations and leave you with a couple of conclusions that will help you in moving forward towards a more strategic approach. So the overview is basically us examining two data sets. And so that's one of them is the breweries data set with around 500 observations. And the other one is the beers data set with around 2,400 observations. And so one of the very first things that we did was we wanted to get a count of how many breweries were found in each state. And I think that this plot gives us a very accurate description and allows us to see who is the leading, what are the median breweries in the states, and which one has the minimums. And so we can clearly see that Colorado is the leading state with 47 breweries. After that, we're followed with two states that have breweries in the 30s, 7 states in the 20s, 9 in the 10s, and 28 states less than 10, excluding the minimums. And so we have 4 states that are in the minimum pile with 1 brewery for each state. So this gives us a good idea of our counts, where we want to focus our efforts, and that just depends on our strategy or the end result. If we have 47 breweries for Colorado, we might want to focus all of our efforts or the majority of them on Colorado, or we could probably take another approach and focus our approach on the last 4, which are the minimums, which is West Virginia, South Dakota, North Dakota, and DC. And so again, that just depends on our approach. But I think that this plot gives us a good idea of what we're working with here. After this data set, we wanted to be able to see the missing values because they do play an important role in our analysis. And so we wanted to see if there was a correlation between the missing values or if they were missing completely at random. So the first thing that we did was we looked at the ABV and IBU metrics, and we're quickly able to tell that the majority of the missing values are for the IBU metric. We also are missing a couple of values for the ABV, but they are not much. There are 62 observations that are both missing for ABV and IBU. And so the only thing that this tells us is that there may not be a correlation between ABV and IBU in terms of missing data. But we didn't want to stop there. We wanted to continue and dive a little deeper. And so what we're looking at here is the distribution of the missing data amongst the data set. Again, we're able to see that IBU is missing the majority of the observations, but that they are scattered amongst the data set. So the black are the missing observations. And this gives us an idea that they're missing maybe completely at random. And we can say the same thing for ABV, where although we don't have that many missing data observations, they are also scattered across the data set. So we are inclined to say that they are missing completely at random. The last thing that we wanted to do before making this determination was looking at the correlation between IBU and ABV in terms of missing data. And we decided to group this by state. And so the red are missing values, and we're quickly able to tell that we're missing data amongst every state. So this leads us to the conclusion that the missing values are missing completely at random, and therefore we can go and continue our analysis with this in mind. So after we've done this, now we can dive a little deeper into the ABU and ABV and IBU metrics such as median, mode, and averages.
Thank you, David. Welcome. So yes, we want to continue our analysis on beers and breweries and want to look at two parameters. So we want to highlight the alcoholic content and the bitterness as it relates to each state. So what we did was want to first see how the beer was distributed based on the alcoholic content and the bitterness by state. So we calculate the median IBV and the IBU for each state. And here we were able to see that DC has the highest median alcohol content at 0.0625. Next slide, David. And we were able to see here that West Virginia has the highest median for bitterness beer content at 57.5. And so just keeping that information in mind, we wanted to we were just interested to see like which state might have had the most alcoholic beer and which state had the most bitter beer. So we were able to see that state of Colorado was leading or had the most alcoholic beer, which is the Lee Series Volume 5, the Belgian style quadruple L, which is a quad at 12 ounce, and it had the most alcoholic content at 0.128. Next slide. And here we can see that Oregon had the beer, the most bitter beer, and the name of that beer is the Bitter B Imperial IPA. And it is a American Double Imperial IPA at 12 ounce, and it's leading in the most bitter beer at 138. So that was just a brief overview of the alcoholic content and the bitterness, medium per state, and which states had the most bitter beer, most alcoholic beer. So what I'm gonna do now is turn it over to my colleague, Sammy, who is going to discuss the relationship between the alcoholic content and the bitterness as it relates to other types of beer, the correlation there.
Thank you, Erica and David. Just looking at the statistics of the alcohol content, let's look at summary statistics. The ABV content varies between 0.027 and 0.128, with 50% of the data is between 0.05 and 0.067. This is after taking out all the missing values for ABV variable. The mean is slightly higher than the median, so which implies the slight right squareness of the distribution, and not perfectly symmetric, as you can see. Next slide, David. So to just see how the relationship between the bitterness and the alcoholic content, I have a regression line drawn, which the correlation coefficient is 0.67. It actually indicates a moderately strong positive linear relationship between the two variables, the alcohol content and the bitterness. It implies as the alcoholic content increases, the bitterness of the beer increase as well, but not perfectly. With this, I pass on to Erica to talk about two specific types of beer.
Thank you, Sammy. So now we want to just take a look at two styles or two types of beers, the IPAs and the ale, and look at them in respect to our two parameters, the alcoholic content and the bitterness unit. We were able to do a model here and look at approximately 384 of these different types of beers, the ales and IPAs. And we were able, using this model, we were able to classify these two type of beers with respect to our two parameters, the alcoholic content and the bitterness, with an 84% accuracy. And we were able to see here too that the model was able to with 88% accuracy identify the ale beers correctly with respect to alcoholic content and bitterness, and with 79% accuracy, it was able to classify IPAs. And from this model, we were able to conclude that the ale type of beers have the lowest alcoholic content as well as low bitterness as compared to the IPAs. The IPAs had the highest alcoholic content, and they were more bitter, just based on our model here, our classification model. And so with that information, in conclusion, we just want to just to go over again, just a brief overview here and concluding. Colorado, as we can see, was the state leading with the most breweries, and probably with that being said, had the most different type of variety of beers, so that may be a place to keep in mind when you're doing your research. As far as missing data, we were concluding that the data was missing at random, so we were able to rectify that and implement different type. In other words, we were able to use the missing data that we had did not affect our data analysis here. We were able to rectify that. With respect to alcoholic content and the bitterness, again, those two parameters, we were able to see that Colorado had the beer with the most alcoholic content. Oregon had was the state with the beer with the most bitter content. And just evaluating these beers and the data and the parameters, we were able, just want to conclude or suggest that, as moving forward, we hope that this information was helpful and that our analysis could help in your next strategic move in whether or not what type of beer you would look for, so are looking to produce, whether it be beer with the highest alcoholic content, or beer with was most bitter, or beer with the lowest content, or less bitter. So we hope that this information was helpful. And if there are any questions or anything else we can help with, please feel free to reach out to us. Our information will be provided to each and every one of you. And thank you.